He was asking for directions on the street when he heard, "Mommy, it's him, the man we always pray to God for." Gabriel Sterling was looking confusedly at the crumpled tourist map in his hands when he felt a tug on the hem of his worn-out pants. His clothes were stained with dirt and torn in several places, the result of yet another night spent sleeping under the overpass on Main Street. He was trying to figure out which direction to go to reach Central Square, where he usually managed to get a few dollars from more generous tourists. That's when he heard the high-pitched shout that made his heart race for no apparent reason. "Mommy, it's him, the man we always pray to God for." The child's shrill voice cut through the traffic noise. Gabriel turned around and saw a little girl running toward him with her arms open. She had curly hair tied in braids and wore a simple, light-colored dress. Before he could react, the child threw herself against his legs with such force she almost knocked him over. "My God," murmured a woman's voice a few meters behind. A woman had stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, a shopping bag fallen at her feet. Vegetables and fruit rolled on the ground, but she didn't seem to notice. Her eyes were fixed on Gabriel, wide with shock, while one hand covered her slightly open mouth. Gabriel tried to pull away, but the girl held on with surprising strength for someone so small. He didn't understand anything that was happening. People usually moved away from him on the street, not ran toward him. "Let go of me, kid," he said, his voice hoarse from lack of use. "You've got the wrong person." No, it's really you." The child lifted her face to look at him, and Gabriel saw her eyes were full of tears. "I recognize your eyes. They're the same eyes that looked at me in the hospital." The woman finally reacted and hurried over. Gabriel thought she would pull her daughter away from him, like so many mothers had done before. Instead, she stopped just a few steps away and began to cry. "Dr. Gabriel, is it really you?" That name echoed in his head as something both familiar and distant. Gabriel. Yes, he knew that was his name. But doctor, that made no sense at all. He was a beggar, had lived on the streets for so long he could barely remember how he got there. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied, trying again to free himself from the girl's hug. "I'm nobody's doctor. Sir, please." The woman took another step forward, tears streaming freely down her face. "Don't you remember me? I'm Sarah Jenkins, and this is my daughter, Lily." The names didn't spark any memory. Gabriel shook his head. "Look, ma'am, you must have me confused with someone else. I don't know you." "But we know you," said the girl, finally letting go of his legs so she could look at him better. "You saved my life when I was really little. Mommy showed me your picture 1,000,000 times." Gabriel felt something strange stir inside him, a feeling he couldn't name, as if something important was trying to emerge from a very deep, dark place in his mind. But nothing came, only that nameless anguish. "Lily, come here." Sarah reached out for her daughter, but her eyes never left Gabriel. "I'm sorry, doctor. I know you must be confused, but please don't leave yet. I need to talk to you." "I have nothing to say," Gabriel began to back away, "and I'm not a doctor." "You operated on my daughter's heart 5 years ago," Sarah spoke quickly, as if afraid he would disappear at any moment. "She was 2 years old and no hospital would take her because I had no money. Everyone said the surgery was too expensive, too risky, but you agreed to do the operation for free. She said a child couldn't wait for bureaucracy." Gabriel stopped, not because he had remembered something, but because he saw absolute sincerity in that woman's eyes. She truly believed what she was saying. "My heart had a hole," said Lily, tapping her chest lightly. "A really big hole that made me turn purple, but you fixed it. Mommy said you used angel hands." "I don't know how to do surgery," murmured Gabriel. "I don't even know if I've ever been in a hospital in my life." The words sounded strange even to himself. There was something wrong with them, but he couldn't identify what. It was as if his mouth knew more than his head. "Please," Sarah took another step. "Just give me 5 minutes. Let me explain. If after that you want to leave, I won't stop you. But I need you to listen to me." Gabriel looked around. Some people had stopped to watch the scene. He knew those looks. They were the same ones he received daily on the streets, a mix of pity and discomfort. But there was something different now. People weren't looking at him with disgust. They were curious. "All right," he finally agreed. 5 minutes. Sarah let out a relieved sigh and bent down to gather the scattered groceries. Lily ran to help her, but she didn't take her eyes off Gabriel, as if she feared he might evaporate. "There's a diner right there on the corner," said Sarah, pointing. "Can I buy you something to eat while we talk?" The mention of food made Gabriel's stomach growl loudly. He hadn't eaten anything since the previous morning, when he had found half a sandwich in the trash, but something in him resisted the idea of accepting the help. "You don't have to," he said. "I insist." Sarah was already walking towards the diner. "Please." Gabriel hesitated another moment before following them. Lily walked beside him, looking up with a huge smile on her face. She didn't seem to mind the bad smell that surely came from him, nor his filthy clothes. The diner was small and modest, with just a few plastic tables. Sarah chose one in the corner, away from the other customers. Gabriel noticed how she positioned herself so that his back was to the rest of the establishment, shielding him from curious looks. "What would you like to eat?" she asked. "Anything is fine." Sarah went to the counter and ordered a full blue plate special, juice and a slice of cake. When she returned to the table, Gabriel was already sitting uncomfortably in the chair, as if he wasn't used to furniture. Lily sat next to him, still smiling. "I knew God would bring you back," said the girl. "I knew it." "Lily, let the doctor breathe a little," Sarah asked gently. "I'm not a doctor," repeated Gabriel for the third time. "I don't know why you keep calling me that." Sarah took her phone out of her bag and fiddled with it for a few seconds. Then she turned the screen toward Gabriel. It was an old, slightly blurry photo. It showed a man in a white coat, smiling at the camera while holding a very small baby in his arms. The man had a trimmed beard, neatly cut hair, and eyes that shone with confidence. Gabriel looked at the photo and felt his heart race again. That man was him. He knew it with absolute certainty, even though he couldn't remember when that photo had been taken. "This is Lily at 2 months old," explained Sarah, her voice trembling. 2 months after the surgery. You insisted on following her recovery personally. You came to see her every week at the community health clinic in my neighborhood, even without getting paid for it. "I don't remember," whispered Gabriel, still looking at the photo. "I don't remember any of this." "I know you don't remember, but I never forgot." Sarah ran her finger across the screen, bringing up another image. "This one is from the article that ran in the local paper. It was a scanned newspaper clipping. The headline read, 'Heart surgeon performs free surgeries for underprivileged children.' There were several photos of him at the hospital, always surrounded by children and grateful families. The waiter brought the food and Gabriel realized he was trembling. He picked up his fork with difficulty and began to eat slowly, trying to process it all. "What happened to me?" he asked between bites. "How did I end up on the streets?" Sarah took a deep breath before answering. "It's been 3 years. You disappeared suddenly. You left the hospital one night after a shift and never came back. At first, they thought it was just a delay, but when days went by with no news, everyone started to worry. Your family looked everywhere. They even put it on TV. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. I have a family." Gabriel put down his fork, suddenly without appetite. "You had," Sarah corrected gently. "Your parents had already passed away before you disappeared. I don't know if you have siblings or other relatives. I only know what I read in the papers at the time." Gabriel ran his hand over his face, feeling the long, tangled beard under his fingers. How was it possible to have lost 3 whole years? Where had he been all this time? And why couldn't he remember anything at all? "You really don't remember anything?" asked Lily, her voice small. "Not even me?" The sadness on the girl's face made something ache inside Gabriel's chest. He wanted to lie, to say yes, that he remembered her, but he couldn't. "I'm sorry, kiddo. I don't remember." "But you will remember." Lily smiled again with a confidence he didn't understand. "I'm sure you'll remember everything, because God answered my prayers and brought you back." "Lily prays for you every night," said Sarah, her eyes welling up again. Ever since she understood you were gone, she's asked God to find you and bring you back safe and sound. She never stopped asking, not for a single day. Gabriel didn't know what to say. He didn't consider himself religious, at least not that he could remember, but there was something deeply moving about that child's unwavering faith. "Where are you staying?" asked Sarah. "Nowhere," he answered honestly. "On the streets." "For how long?" "I don't know. I don't remember when I started living like this. I just know it's been a long time." "The whole 3 years?" Sarah looked horrified. "You spent 3 years on the streets?" Gabriel shrugged. He saw no point in denying the obvious. "So you have to come live with us," said Lily excitedly. "We have a really comfortable couch." "Lily, it's not that simple," began Sarah, but the girl interrupted her. "Why not? He has nowhere to stay. We have a couch. He just has to say yes." "I won't take advantage of your kindness," said Gabriel, pushing the plate away. Suddenly, all that food seemed too heavy in his stomach. "You've already done more than enough for me by bringing me here." "You saved my daughter's life," Sarah said firmly. "There's no way to repay that. If you agree to stay with us, even if it's just for a few days while you figure out what happened, you'll be doing me a favor. Not a charity." Gabriel looked from one to the other. The determined mother, the hopeful daughter. He wanted to refuse, to walk out and return to the familiarity of the streets, however harsh that life was. But at the same time, there was something inside him that wanted to understand. He wanted to know who he had been before. "Just until I figure something out," he finally agreed. "And only if you let me help with something around the house. I won't stay for free." "Deal," said Sarah, smiling for the first time. "And the first thing we're going to do is find you some clean clothes." They lived in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building. 2 bedrooms, a combined living room and kitchen, a tiny bathroom. But it was clean and cozy, full of pictures of Lily at various ages on the walls. "The bathroom is over there," Sarah indicated. "I'll get some clean towels. Feel free to take a long shower. Oh, and there's shampoo and soap under the sink." Gabriel entered the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror for the first time in a long while. What he saw shocked him. His eyes were sunken in a thin, sun-weathered face. His beard was long and tangled. His hair fell over his shoulders in greasy strands. He could barely recognize himself. Maybe that was why he couldn't remember who he had been. That man in the mirror didn't seem capable of saving lives. He seemed like someone who could barely save himself. The hot water from the shower was the best feeling he'd had in a long time. Gabriel stood under the spray for long minutes, watching the grime swirl down the drain. He used the shampoo 3 times until he felt his hair was truly clean. The soap made brown lather at first, gradually lightening until it was white. When he came out, there were clothes folded on top of the toilet lid. Jeans, a simple t-shirt, underwear still in the package. Everything seemed new. Gabriel dressed slowly, feeling strange at the sensation of clean fabric against his skin. In the living room, Sarah had made coffee. Lily was sitting on the sofa, flipping through a thick notebook. "I brought this for you to see," the girl said when he appeared. "It's about you." Gabriel approached and saw it was a scrapbook. Page after page of news clippings, photos, documents, all about him, about the surgeon he had been. "I started making this when you disappeared," Sarah explained. "I wanted Lily to know who you were. I wanted her to never forget the man who saved her life." Gabriel sat down next to the girl and began to leaf through the album. There were photos of him in various hospitals, always smiling, articles about successful surgeries, thank you letters from families, a piece about how he had used his own inheritance to create a fund that paid for surgeries for underprivileged children. On every page he saw the face of a man he couldn't recognize as himself, not just physically, but emotionally. That man seemed confident, happy, full of purpose. And Gabriel? Gabriel just felt empty and lost. "Here," Lily pointed to a specific photo. "That's the day you operated on me." The image showed him in surgical scrubs, holding a tiny baby. Sarah was beside him, also masked, but tears were visible in her eyes. Below the photo, there was a handwritten caption. "Doctor, Gabriel Sterling performs heart surgery on 2-year-old baby. Operation lasted 8 hours and was successful." 8 hours, Gabriel murmured. I spent 8 hours operating on you. And 2 more waiting to make sure I was stable, Sarah added. You wouldn't leave until you were absolutely sure everything was okay. Gabriel ran his finger over the photo, as if he could feel some connection to that moment through the paper. But nothing came, just that frustrating emptiness. What happened? He asked, turning to Sarah. Why did I disappear? No one knows for sure, she sighed. But there was something that happened just before. A scandal at the hospital. Someone accused you of committing negligence in a surgery. They said a patient was in critical condition because of a mistake you made. And was it true? No, Sarah was emphatic. Everyone who knew you knew it was a lie. You were the best surgeon in that hospital. You had never lost a patient. But the accusations were very serious. There was an investigation, a lawsuit, everything. It was on the front page of the newspapers. Gabriel felt a tightness in his chest. Something in those words resonated within him. Not an exact memory, but a feeling. Anger, frustration, helplessness. And then you vanished. A few days after the accusations went public, you just disappeared. They never knew if it was the stress, if you had some kind of mental breakdown, or if it was something else. The investigation into the negligence was closed because you were no longer there to defend yourself or to be officially cleared. Who accused me? A doctor from the same hospital, Dr. Harrison Vance. He was your colleague. The name didn't spark any memory, but Gabriel felt a pang of something that could be recognition. Or maybe it was just anger at the situation. Where is he now? In your place, said Sarah bitterly. He took over your position as head of the cardiac surgery department. They say he became very wealthy since then. The hospital has a new program of expensive surgeries that only he performs. So he got me out of the way and took everything that was mine, concluded Gabriel. That's what everyone thought at the time. But there was no way to prove anything. And then you vanished and the case was forgotten. Gabriel closed the album and stared at the cover. His photo was stamped there, that smiling man he didn't recognize. Beneath the photo, Lily had written in colored pen, "The man God sent to save my life." I don't think I'm a gift from God, he said softly. Look at me. I don't remember anything. I don't know how to do anything. I spent 3 years living on the streets. I'm not the person in these photos. You still are, insisted Lily, resting her head on his arm. You're just a little lost right now, but we're going to help you find yourself again. The confidence in the girl's voice was absolute. She truly believed he could become who he had been before. Gabriel wasn't so sure, but something in that childlike faith touched him deeply. I'll try, he promised. I don't know if it'll lead anywhere, but I'll try. Sarah prepared the sofa for him to sleep on. She brought clean sheets, a soft pillow, even a light blanket. Gabriel looked at that makeshift bed as if it was something from another world. How long had it been since he'd slept on something so comfortable? Thank you, he said, his voice choked, for everything. You had no obligation to help me. Yes, we did, Sarah replied simply. You saved my daughter. Now it's our turn to save you. That night, Gabriel lay on the sofa and stared at the ceiling for hours. He couldn't sleep. His mind was too agitated, trying to process everything he had discovered. He was a surgeon. He saved lives. He had been important to many people. And now? What was he now? From the next room he could hear Lily whispering. She must have been praying before bed, as Sarah had said she did every night. Gabriel didn't understand much about religion, but there was something moving in that child's devotion. Thank you, God, for answering my prayers, murmured Lily. Thank you for bringing Dr. Gabriel back. Now please help him remember everything. Help him be happy again. Amen. Gabriel closed his eyes, feeling something warm trickle from their corners. How long had it been since he last cried? He couldn't even remember that. But he cried that night. He cried for the man he had been and couldn't recall. He cried for the 3 lost years on the streets. He cried for the kindness of that woman and that girl who had taken him in without a second thought. And for the first time in a long while he also cried with something that could be hope. Maybe he really could find himself again. Maybe there was still a chance to understand who he was. The next morning, Gabriel woke to the smell of coffee and toast. It took him a few seconds to remember where he was. The soft sofa, the clean walls, the sound of voices in the kitchen. For a moment, he felt the urge to run, returning to the streets where everything was simpler, more predictable. But then Lily appeared at the living room door, already in her school uniform, with a huge smile on her face. "Good morning. Mommy made coffee for you." And Gabriel stayed. The first days in Sarah's house were strange. Gabriel wasn't used to routine, to mealtimes, to having to sleep indoors. More than once he woke up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, wanting to run away. But whenever he thought about leaving, he would see Lily coming home from school, excited to tell him about her day, or Sarah preparing a careful meal, and something made him stay. Sarah worked as a seamstress in a small workshop in the neighborhood. She left early and returned in the late afternoon. Lily went to school in the morning and stayed at a neighbor's house until her mother picked her up. Gabriel was alone during the day, trying to keep himself occupied. On the third day, he decided to do a thorough cleaning of the apartment. Sarah had done so much for him that it was the least he could do. He cleaned every corner, organized everything, even fixed a dripping faucet. When Sarah came home and saw everything clean and organized, she stopped in the middle of the living room and began to cry. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping her tears. "It's just that it's been so long since anyone helped me with these things. It's always been just me and Lily." "And her father?" asked Gabriel, and immediately regretted it. "Sorry, it's none of my business." "No, it's okay." Sarah sat on the sofa, still holding her purse. "He left us when he found out Lily had a heart problem, said he didn't want a sick daughter, that he wasn't going to spend money on treatment for a child who would probably spend her whole life in a hospital." "What a son of a bitch," Gabriel blurted out before thinking. Sarah gave a weak laugh. "Yes, he was. But you know what? I think it was for the best. I don't want anyone near my daughter who is capable of abandoning a sick child. Lily deserves people who truly love her, not who see her as a problem. She's lucky to have you as her mother. And I was lucky to have you as her doctor." Sarah looked at him seriously. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have my daughter today. The other doctors told me that to my face. They said that without the surgery, she wouldn't live past 3, and that the surgery was impossible for someone like me to afford." "How did I do the surgery then?" Gabriel sat down beside her. "If it was so expensive?" "You paid for it, out of your own pocket. Said you used part of an inheritance you had saved. Said money existed to be used on important things, and that saving a child's life was the most important thing there was." Gabriel shook his head, amazed. "I really said that?" "You did. And you did it. It wasn't just with me. There were other families too. You operated on dozens of children for free. Some weren't even urgent life or death cases, but cases that would change their quality of life. Severe scoliosis, orthopedic problems, things like that. You paid for everything. And no one thought it was strange. Isn't there something illegal about that? Not when it's the doctor himself paying out of his own pocket. You used your own resources, not the hospital's. There was nothing wrong with that. It was just something very, very rare to happen." Gabriel was silent for a moment, processing that. What kind of person had he been? What kind of life did he lead to be able to do something like that? "I must have had a lot of money. I don't know exactly how much, but I know you came from a wealthy family. Your parents left a good inheritance, and you earned well as a surgeon too. But even so, spending so much on other people, it was very generous." "Or very idiotic," murmured Gabriel. "Don't say that." Sarah turned to face him. "You saved my daughter. You saved the lives of so many other children. That's not idiocy. It's kindness. It's humanity. It's about being the best version of what a person can be." Gabriel didn't know how to respond. Part of him wanted to believe those words, but another part, the part that had spent 3 years surviving on the streets, knew the world wasn't that simple. Kindness didn't pay the bills. Generosity didn't keep you alive. But he didn't say any of that. He just thanked her and went to the kitchen to start preparing dinner. It was one of the few things he'd discovered he could do well, even without his memory. As if his hands remembered movements his mind had forgotten. That night, after Lily went to sleep, Sarah showed more clippings to Gabriel. They weren't from the album he'd already seen. They were other articles, kept separately. "These are about the scandal," she explained. "About the accusations against you." Gabriel read everything carefully. The story was more complicated than he'd imagined. A patient he had operated on had suffered serious post-operative complications. The man was in a coma for 2 weeks before recovering. The family accused Gabriel of making a mistake during the surgery. Dr. Harrison Vance had testified in favor of the family, saying he saw Gabriel make questionable decisions during the procedure. Other doctors had defended Gabriel, but the evidence seemed to weigh against him. "There's something wrong here," said Gabriel, rereading one of the articles. "If this Harrison really saw me do something wrong, why did he wait until afterward to speak up? Why didn't he intervene at the time?" That's exactly what your defenders argued, but his response was that he didn't want to create conflict in the middle of a delicate surgery, that he thought it was better to let you finish and then report what he had seen. Too convenient. Everyone thought that, but there was no way to prove he was lying. Gabriel kept reading. There were interviews with other doctors from the hospital, most defending his competence. There were testimonials from previous patients, all speaking wonders about him. But there was also the voice of the family of the patient who almost didn't survive, and they were convinced he had made a mistake. "Did the patient recover in the end?" asked Gabriel. "Yes, completely. He's alive and well to this day. But the family never withdrew the accusations. They believe you almost killed their father." Gabriel closed his eyes. Even without remembering, he could imagine the weight of it. Being publicly accused of incompetence, of nearly causing a tragedy, his reputation being destroyed in newspapers and news reports, the pressure, the stress, the pain of not being able to properly defend himself. Would it have been enough to cause a breakdown, to make him disappear? "Do you think I ran away?" he asked quietly. "Think I couldn't handle the pressure and just ran?" Sarah took a while to answer. "I don't know. No one knows. But the Gabriel I knew didn't seem like the type of person who would run from a problem. You always faced things head-on. You always fought for what you believed was right. Maybe you didn't know me that well. Maybe. Or maybe something happened that we don't know about. Something that forced you to disappear." Gabriel thought about that. It made sense in a way. But what? What could have happened that would lead him to vanish completely, to the point of losing all his memory? "Tomorrow I'm going to start looking for answers," he decided. "I'm going back to the hospital, talk to people who knew me. Someone must know something." "Are you sure?" Sarah looked worried. "Reliving all this could be painful." "It already hurts not remembering anything," replied Gabriel. "At least if I look, maybe the pain will have a purpose." The next day, Gabriel woke up determined. Sarah had given him some clothes that belonged to her brother, simple but presentable things. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw someone who at least appeared minimally respectable, even if still very different from the man in the photos. St. Jude's General Hospital was on the other side of the city. Gabriel took 2 buses to get there, using the money Sarah insisted on giving him. During the trip, he watched the city pass by the window, trying to see if anything sparked a memory. But everything remained new and strange. The hospital was large, with several connected buildings. Gabriel stood at the main entrance for a few minutes, just looking. He tried to feel some familiarity, some connection. Nothing. He took a deep breath and went in. The receptionist looked at him with suspicion as he approached the counter. Gabriel realized that despite the clean clothes, he still looked like someone who had lived on the streets for a long time. He was too thin, his long hair needed a proper cut, and there was a certain hardness in his face that wasn't there in the old photos. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, polite but distant. Gabriel hesitated. How to explain that situation? "I worked here a few years ago. I'm Gabriel Sterling. I was a surgeon." The receptionist blinked, confused. "Sorry, I don't think I understood. You said you were a surgeon?" "I am. Or I was. I don't know, it's complicated." "Do you have any identification?" Gabriel shook his head. He had nothing. No documents, no ID, nothing to prove who he was. Look, I know this seems strange, but I really worked here. I disappeared 3 years ago. There was even news coverage. My name is Gabriel Sterling, and I was the head of the cardiac surgery department. The woman continued to look at him skeptically. Can you wait a moment? She picked up the phone and spoke quietly for a few seconds. Gabriel couldn't hear what she was saying, but he imagined it wasn't good. Probably calling security to remove the crazy man who showed up claiming to be a missing doctor. A few minutes later, a man in a white coat appeared. He was older, probably in his 60s, with graying hair and an air of authority. His eyes looked Gabriel up and down, assessing. "You said you're Gabriel Sterling?" he asked. "I am." The man came closer, studying his face carefully. "My God," he murmured. "It really is you. You're alive. You know me?" "I do. I'm Dr. Arthur Penhaligon. We worked together for 5 years. I was your mentor when you started here as a resident." Gabriel felt a pang of frustration for not remembering, but also relief at finally finding someone who recognized him. "Can I talk to you? In private?" Arthur looked around, noticing the curious glances beginning to gather. Several staff members had stopped what they were doing to watch the scene. "Come with me," he said, indicating a side hallway. They went to a small meeting room. Arthur closed the door behind them and looked at Gabriel for a long moment, as if still unable to believe he was really there. "Where have you been all this time?" he finally asked. "On the streets. I don't know how or why. I don't remember anything from the last 3 years. Are you saying you have amnesia?" "I think so. I don't remember disappearing. I don't remember where I was. I don't remember anything. I only remember already being on the streets, living off handouts." Arthur sat down heavily in one of the chairs. "Gabriel, do you have any idea of the chaos you caused when you vanished? Your family looked for you for months. We turned the whole city upside down. We thought you had—" He stopped, not finishing the sentence. "Thought I had killed myself." "Yes. It was the most logical explanation considering everything that was happening. The scandal, the accusations, the pressure. We thought you couldn't take it and had taken your own life. But you never found a body." "No. And that's what kept some people looking, but after a while most gave up. They assumed you had gone far away and started a new life, or that something had happened and we'd never find the body." Gabriel sat down too, processing that. "Does Dr. Harrison Vance still work here?" Alberto's expression changed. It grew harder, more closed off. "He does. He assumed your position as head of the department." "And? How is he doing?" "Well, very well, actually. The department is more profitable than ever. Harrison implemented several new procedures, brought in cutting-edge technology. The whole hospital has grown since he took over." There was something in Arthur's voice that Gabriel couldn't identify. A hesitation, perhaps, or discomfort. "But," Gabriel pressed, "but nothing. He is a good doctor and a good administrator." "That's not what your voice is saying." Arthur sighed. "Gabriel, you vanished 3 years ago. I don't know what you want to hear from me, but I won't speak ill of a colleague based on feelings." "What feelings?" "It doesn't matter." "It does matter. Please, Dr. Arthur, I don't remember anything. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know why I disappeared. I don't even really know who I was. Anything you can tell me will help." Arthur was silent for a long moment before speaking. "I never believed the accusations against you. I knew you well enough to know you would never be negligent. But I also had no way to prove Harrison was lying. He had power, he had connections, and he had a convincing story." "You think he set me up?" "I do. I always did. Harrison envied you for years. You were younger, more talented, more admired. You got the head position he thought should have been his. And you still used your personal money to help poor patients, which gave you an even better reputation. Harrison hated that. So he decided to destroy me. I have no proof. I never did. But yes, I think that's what he did. And it worked. You vanished, he got your position, and everyone eventually forgot about the scandal." Gabriel felt anger rise in his throat. Anger at a man he couldn't remember, but who had apparently destroyed his life out of pure envy. I want to talk to him. That's not a good idea, Arthur shook his head. You have no memory, no documents, nothing to prove you are who you say you are. Showing up here after 3 years, accusing the department head of setting you up, it won't lead to anything good. But I am who I say I am. You recognized me. I did, but that doesn't mean everyone will. You've changed a lot, Gabriel, physically and probably emotionally too. And even if you prove your identity, there's no way to prove Harrison did anything wrong. Gabriel knew Arthur was right, but the anger didn't subside. So he wins, just like that. He destroys my life and takes everything that was mine, and there are no consequences? It's not about winning or losing. It's about reality. You have no standing here anymore. Your medical license was probably suspended. You can't just come back and resume your life as if nothing happened. I don't want to resume my life, said Gabriel, surprised to realize it was true. I don't even know if I want to be a doctor again. But I want to understand what happened. I want to know the truth. The truth is, you vanished, for reasons only you may know. And now you're back, but the world moved on, moved. That's the truth, Gabriel. Harsh, but it's the only one that matters. Gabriel stood up, suddenly unable to stay in that room any longer. Thank you for talking with me, Dr. Arthur. Wait, Arthur also stood. Do you need help? Money, a place to stay, anything? No, I have a place to stay. If you need anything, come find me. You were one of the best doctors who ever worked here. That hasn't changed, even with everything that happened. Gabriel just nodded and left. He walked through the hospital, observing the movement of doctors, nurses, patients. He tried to picture himself there, wearing a white coat, moving through the hallways with confidence. He couldn't. He was almost at the exit when he heard a voice behind him. Gabriel Sterling? He turned and saw a man around 40, tall, well-dressed, with the kind of confidence that comes from someone used to being obeyed. There was something familiar about his face, something that made Gabriel's stomach churn. You must be Harrison, Gabriel said before he even thought. The man smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. I am indeed Dr. Harrison Vance. It's been a while, hasn't it? 3 years. Yes, 3 years. I heard you were here. I couldn't believe it when they told me. Gabriel Sterling, back from the dead. I wasn't dead. Figure of speech. Harrison shrugged. But tell me, where have you been all this time? On the streets. Ah. The man didn't even seem surprised. What a tragedy. And now you're here because... Looking for answers. About what happened 3 years ago. About the accusations. About everything. Harrison crossed his arms, his expression growing more serious. Gabriel, look. I don't know what brought you back here, but I advise you to leave the past in the past. You disappeared. Life moved on. Trying to revive that scandal won't do anyone any good. Especially not you, I imagine. Harrison's eyes flashed with something that could be anger or amusement. It was hard to tell. Especially not me, you're right. But also not you. You're not a doctor anymore, Gabriel. Your license has been suspended for 3 years. You have no credibility, no standing, nothing. You're just a... He looked Gabriel up and down with disdain. A man from the streets trying to return to a life that doesn't exist anymore. You fabricated those accusations, said Gabriel, his voice low but firm. You lied to get me out of the way. Be careful what you say. Harrison's voice turned dangerous. Accusing a respected doctor of falsifying records is a serious matter, especially coming from someone who has no proof of anything. Not yet. Harrison took a step forward, closing the space between them. Let me be perfectly clear. I don't know what happened to you 3 years ago, and frankly, I don't care. But if you show up here making accusations, spreading rumors, trying to tarnish my reputation, you'll regret it. Understood? Gabriel held his gaze, feeling that anger grow even stronger inside him. I understand that you're scared. Must be a good reason for that. Harrison's jaw tightened. You were always too arrogant for your own good. Maybe that's what led you to the streets. Arrogance eventually comes with a price. And lies. What's the price of a lie? Harrison smiled again, but this time there was genuine malice in the gesture. You only find out when you're caught, and I don't intend to be caught at anything. He stepped back, but before leaving he turned once more. A word of friendly advice, disappear again. It'll be better for everyone, especially for you. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. And then Harrison was gone, leaving Gabriel alone in the hallway. His hands were trembling with anger. That encounter had confirmed his suspicions. Harrison hadn't just fabricated the accusations, he was willing to do anything to keep Gabriel away. But why? What did Harrison have to hide? Was envy over his position enough to destroy someone's life like that, or was there something more? Gabriel left the hospital with more questions than answers, but at least now he was sure of one thing. He wasn't going to give up, he wasn't going to disappear again. He would find out the truth, whatever the cost. When he got back to Sarah's apartment, it was already late at night. Lily was asleep, and Sarah was sewing on the couch, probably finishing some overdue work. "How did it go?" she asked when she saw him come in. Gabriel told her everything. The hospital, Dr. Arthur, the meeting with Harrison. Sarah listened in silence, her expression growing more and more worried. "This Harrison seems dangerous," she said when Gabriel finished. "Maybe you should follow Dr. Arthur's advice and let it go." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because if I let it go, I'll spend the rest of my life not knowing who I really was. I'll always be that man from the streets, the one who remembers nothing, and I don't want to be just that." Sarah sighed. "I understand, but promise me one thing. You'll be careful. You won't put yourself in unnecessary danger." "I promise." But even as he made the promise, Gabriel wasn't sure he could keep it. There was something inside him, maybe muscle memory or just plain determination, that wouldn't let him give up. In the following days, Gabriel began to investigate on his own. He used Sarah's computer to research the case Harrison, the hospital. He found the same articles he'd already seen, but he also discovered new things. Harrison had taken over as head of the department right after Gabriel disappeared. But it wasn't a smooth transition. There was resistance from other doctors who thought he wasn't qualified enough. Yet mysteriously, those doctors began to leave the hospital one by one. Some retired early, others were transferred, others simply resigned. Within 2 years, Harrison had assembled a completely new team, a team loyal to him. The cardiac surgery department began offering expensive procedures aimed at wealthy patients. The free cases that Gabriel used to do practically disappeared. The hospital was making more money but serving fewer people in need. Gabriel found discussion forums where hospital staff talked anonymously. There were many complaints about the new management, about how authoritarian Harrison was, how he fired anyone who questioned him, how the work environment had become hostile. But there was also praise. Professionals saying the hospital was finally turning a proper profit, that it made no sense to work for free, that Harrison had brought professionalism. It was a complex situation. Harrison wasn't a cartoon villain. He was a man who had seen an opportunity and taken it, and in the process he had destroyed Gabriel. One afternoon, while researching, Gabriel found something interesting, an old news story from about a year before the scandal. It talked about a drug diversion scheme that had been uncovered in several hospitals in the region. Expensive medications were being replaced with counterfeit or lower quality versions, and some patients had gotten sick because of it. The scheme was dismantled, several people were arrested, but the article mentioned that the investigation was still ongoing, that there were suspicions the problem was bigger than initially thought. Gabriel looked for follow-ups to that story but found nothing. The story had simply vanished, no updates, no conclusion, as if someone had buried the case. He made a mental note of it. He didn't know if it was related to his story, but it was too strange to be a coincidence. A few days later, Lily came home from school very excited. "Dr. Gabriel, you have to come to my school tomorrow." "Why, kiddo?" "Because the teacher asked each of us to invite someone important to talk about their job. And I want to bring you. You can tell them how you saved my life." Gabriel looked at Sarah, who looked as surprised as he was. "Lily, I don't know if that's a good idea," her mother said. "Dr. Gabriel is not working as a doctor at the moment." "But he saved my life. That's important," insisted the girl. "She's right," said Gabriel, surprised by his own words. "I may not be working, but I'm still the person who performed that surgery, even if I don't remember it." Sarah still seemed hesitant. "Are you sure? It might be difficult to talk about this with children." "I want to try." The next day, Gabriel dressed as best he could and went with Lily to the school. It was a small, well-kept building, full of children's drawings on the walls. Lily's teacher, Ms. Thompson, greeted him with a warm smile. "So you're the famous Dr. Gabriel. Lily won't stop talking about you." "I hope it's good things," Gabriel tried to joke, feeling uncomfortable with the attention. "It is. She tells everyone how you saved her life." Lily's class had about 20 children, all sitting in a circle waiting. Gabriel sat in a chair in the center, feeling all those curious little eyes fixed on him. "Good morning, children," he began, his voice a little shaky. "My name is Gabriel, and I was a surgeon." "What's a surgeon?" asked a boy in the front. "It's a doctor who performs operations, who fixes things inside people's bodies when they're sick." "Like a mechanic?" asked another. Gabriel smiled. "Sort of, yes, but instead of fixing cars, we fix people." "And did you fix Lily?" asked a girl with braids. "I did. Her heart had a problem, and I did an operation to fix it." "Did it hurt?" someone wanted to know. "It didn't hurt Lily during the operation because she was asleep, but afterwards it probably hurt a little, like when we scrape our knee and need a bandage." The children asked more questions, some silly, some surprisingly smart. Gabriel answered them all as best he could, adapting his answers for their age. When he finished, the teacher thanked him and the children went back to their activities. But Lily stayed by Gabriel's side, holding his hand. "See? You're still a doctor," she said. "It doesn't matter if you don't remember or if you don't work at the hospital. You're a doctor here." She tapped her own chest. In the heart. Gabriel felt his eyes sting. That little girl, with her unwavering faith and her simple words, was managing to reach parts of him he thought were lost forever. "Thank you, Lily. Thank you for saving me," she smiled. "And thank you for coming back." That night, Gabriel couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Lily's words, the curious children, the strange but good feeling of talking about medicine. There was something there, something that resonated within him in a way nothing else had since he regained consciousness on the streets. Maybe he really was a doctor, not just professionally but essentially. Maybe that was part of who he was, so fundamental that not even amnesia could erase it completely. The next day, Gabriel went to a county clerk's office in town. He needed to recover his documentation. Without an ID, without a social security number, without proof of anything, he was legally non-existent. He couldn't work, couldn't open a bank account, couldn't do practically anything official. The process was complicated. He had to explain his situation several times, fill out forms, provide information he didn't even know was true. But an older clerk eventually took pity and helped him start the process for duplicate copies of all his documents. "It will take a few weeks," the man said, "but eventually you'll have everything again, ID, social security, voter registration, everything." "And my medical license?" asked Gabriel. "How do I recover that?" "That's more complicated. You'll need to contact the regional medical board. They'll have to verify your identity, assess your situation, decide whether to reactivate your license. It's not guaranteed, especially considering you've been out of touch for 3 years. Gabriel thanked them and left. Another obstacle, another complication, but at least he was starting to make progress. On his way home, he decided to go through a different neighborhood, one he didn't know well. He was thinking about everything he still needed to do, about how his life had become so complicated when he heard a noise. Shouts coming from inside a house. Gabriel stopped, trying to decide whether to get involved or keep walking. It wasn't his problem. He should let it go. But then he heard a child's cry, loud and desperate, and something in him simply couldn't ignore it. Gabriel approached the house, a simple construction with the door slightly ajar. Through the window glass, he could see movement inside. A woman screaming, a man shouting back, and between them a small child crying. He knocked on the door. The shouting stopped for a moment. "Who is it?" came the man's irritated voice. "Sorry to bother you," said Gabriel, "but I heard the child crying. Is everything okay?" The door swung open forcefully. The man who appeared was red with anger. "None of your business. Get out of here before I make you leave." Gabriel looked past the man. The woman was at the back of the room, holding a child of maybe 4 years old. The child's face was very red and seemed to be having trouble breathing. "Is the child okay?" asked Gabriel, trying to keep his voice calm. "I told you to leave." The man took a threatening step toward Gabriel. "Robert, stop!" shouted the woman. "She can't breathe right. She needs help." The man hesitated, torn between his anger and his concern for his daughter. Gabriel took the opportunity and stepped inside. "Let me see her," he said, approaching the woman. The child's lips were slightly bluish and she was breathing with difficulty, making a wheezing sound with each breath. Gabriel knelt in front of her, instinct taking over. "Hi there, little one. Having a hard time breathing, huh?" The child nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "Does she have asthma?" Gabriel asked the mother. "Yes, she does, but her medicine ran out and we haven't been able to buy more yet. She was fine, but then she started coughing and it got worse. She's having an asthma attack," explained Gabriel. "She needs to go to the hospital now." "We don't have money for the hospital," said the man, anger giving way to desperation. "And the nearest urgent care closes early." Gabriel thought quickly. He knew what to do, knowledge that came from somewhere deep in his mind. But he had no equipment, no medicine, nothing. "Do you have coffee?" he asked suddenly. "Coffee?" The woman seemed confused. "Yes, coffee, strong and very hot. I have some, but—" "Then make it now, please, as strong as you can." While the woman rushed to the kitchen, Gabriel continued assessing the child. The situation wasn't critical yet, but it was worsening. "Robert, is that your name?" Gabriel looked at the father. "Yeah." "Robert, you need to calm down. Your daughter is sensing your fear and it's making her more nervous, which makes the attack worse. Take a deep breath and stay calm, okay?" The man nodded, clearly making an effort to control his own emotions. The woman returned with a steaming cup of black coffee. "Let her inhale the steam," instructed Gabriel, close to her face, "but be careful not to burn her. The hot steam will help open her airways." The woman did as he said. Gradually, the child's breathing began to become a little less labored. "Now you," Gabriel looked at the father, "go to the nearest pharmacy and buy a bronchodilator. Any kind will do. If you don't have money, borrow it, ask for credit, do whatever you have to. This girl needs the medicine." Robert ran out without arguing. Gabriel stayed there, monitoring the child, instructing the mother on how to position her to breathe better, keeping the atmosphere as calm as possible. 15 minutes later, Robert returned with the medication. Gabriel administered the correct dose and gradually the girl's breathing began to normalize. Color returned to her face and the panic in her eyes subsided. "She's going to be okay," said Gabriel after a few minutes of observation. "But you need to always keep this medicine at home. An asthma attack can be fatal if not treated quickly." "We know," said the mother, crying with relief. "But it's expensive and sometimes we can't afford it. I understand. But please make an effort. Her life depends on it." "Thank you," said Robert, his voice thick. "Thank you so much. Sorry for being rude at the door. We were so worried and arguing and—" "I understand. Just take good care of her, all right?" Gabriel left that house feeling something strange in his chest, something warm and good. He had helped someone. Not as an official doctor, not in a hospital with sophisticated equipment, but with knowledge and calm and the willingness to make a difference. And that had felt right in a way nothing else had since he woke up on the streets with no memory. When he arrived at Sarah's apartment, she was in the kitchen preparing dinner. He told her what had happened and saw pride in her eyes. "You see," she said, "you're still a doctor, Gabriel. It doesn't matter where you are or if you remember or not. It's who you are." "Maybe," he admitted, "but I don't know if that's enough to get my life back. Maybe it's not about getting your old life back. Maybe it's about building a new one." Gabriel thought about that night. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe he didn't need to go back to being who he was before. Maybe he could be someone new, someone better. But first he still needed to understand what had happened. He needed the truth, even if it didn't change anything. In the following days, Gabriel continued his investigation. He spoke with former hospital employees he found through online groups. Most had good things to say about him, but few had useful information about the scandal, until he found a retired nurse named Mrs. Gable. She had worked at the hospital for 30 years and was there when Gabriel disappeared. They arranged to meet at a bakery. Mrs. Gable was a woman in her mid-60s, hair completely white, hands marked by time. But her eyes were sharp and her voice was firm. "I remember you, Doctor." "Gabriel," she said after they sat down, "one of the best doctors I've ever seen. Dedicated, competent, humane. The kind of doctor you dream of having when you're sick." "Thank you. Do you know anything about what happened to me?" Mrs. Gable looked around before answering, as if checking if anyone was listening. "I know a few things. Things I never told anyone because I was afraid. I still am, actually. But you deserve to know the truth." Gabriel leaned forward, his heart racing. "What things?" "About the medication scheme." "Medication scheme?" "There was an investigation a few years ago into counterfeit medications in hospitals. Do you remember that?" "I read something about it. The investigation stopped, didn't it?" "Officially, yes. They said they had caught those responsible and the problem was solved, but it wasn't. The problem continued. It just became more hidden." "And what does that have to do with me?" Mrs. Gable took a deep breath. "You discovered the scheme. You realized that hospital patients were receiving inferior counterfeit medication, especially the poorer patients. You started investigating on your own and discovered the scheme was internal. Someone inside the hospital was diverting good medication and replacing it with counterfeits." Gabriel felt a chill down his spine. "Harrison? I don't have proof, but he was in charge of the hospital pharmacy at the time, and he was very, very nervous when you started asking questions. Why did you never tell anyone this?" "Because I was afraid. Shortly after you disappeared, some people who worked with you started having problems. They lost their jobs, had false accusations made against them, things like that. I realized something very wrong was happening. I decided to stay quiet and wait for my retirement. Cowardly, I know. It's not cowardice to be afraid. It is when people are being harmed and you do nothing." Mrs. Gable had tears in her eyes. "I did nothing while you vanished, while others were persecuted. I've carried this guilt for 3 years. Then help me now. Help me prove what Harrison did. I don't have proof. I didn't keep anything, but I know someone who does." "Who?" "A pharmacist who worked at the hospital at the time. Rachel. She discovered the scheme along with you and kept documents. She was afraid to use them but didn't want to destroy them. She said the truth had to come out one day." "Where is she now?" "She was fired shortly after you disappeared. They claimed cost-cutting, but everyone knew it was because she knew too much. She opened a small pharmacy in the north side. I can give you the address." Gabriel noted the information and thanked Mrs. Gable. The woman held his hand before he left. "Be careful, Dr. Gabriel. Harrison is dangerous. He destroyed you once and won't hesitate to do it again." "I'll be careful." But even as he said it, Gabriel knew he was entering dangerous territory. He was stirring up something a lot of people wanted buried, and that rarely ended well. The next day, Gabriel went to Rachel's pharmacy. It was a small, modest establishment, but clean and well-organized. Rachel was a woman in her 40s, thin, with glasses, and her hair in a bun. When Gabriel entered and said who he was, she paled. "My God. I thought you were—" "Everyone thought you were. I know. But I'm not. And I need to talk to you." Rachel looked nervously at the customers in the store. "Not here. Wait until I close for lunch. We can talk in the back room." An hour later, they were sitting in a small room at the back of the pharmacy, surrounded by boxes of medicine. "Mrs. Gable said you have documents about the counterfeit medicine scheme." Gabriel got straight to the point. Rachel hesitated for a long moment before nodding. "I do. I've kept them for 3 years, waiting— I don't know. Waiting for someone who could do something with them, I suppose." "Why didn't you take them to the police?" "Because I'm afraid. And because without you to confirm what you saw, the documents alone don't prove much. They could be forged, manipulated. I needed a witness with credibility. and you had vanished. Well, now I'm back. But do you have credibility? Rachel looked at him skeptically. No offense, Dr. Gabriel, but you've been missing for 3 years. You look... She searched for delicate words. You look like someone who isn't well. I don't know if your testimony would carry weight in court. Gabriel knew she was right. He had no documents, no active medical license, and his appearance was still that of someone who had lived on the streets. Who would believe him? Then show me the documents, he asked. Let me at least see what you have. Rachel led him to a small safe in the wall. She opened it with a combination and took out a thick folder from inside. There are hundreds of pages, she explained. Records of medicine shipments in and out that don't match, forged signatures, documents from suppliers that don't exist. It's all very technical, but for someone who understands, it clearly shows money was being diverted and medicines were being swapped. Gabriel leafed through the papers. He didn't completely understand everything, but enough to see that Rachel was right. There was the proof of a large, systematic scheme. And how did that involve me? He asked. You found out because you noticed some of your post-operative patients were having unusual complications. You started investigating and realized the antibiotics they were receiving weren't as effective as they should be. You asked me to run some tests and we discovered that some of the medications were counterfeit or adulterated. And then you wanted to take the case further. You wanted to file a formal complaint, but Harrison found out and beat you to it. He created that whole medical negligence scandal to get you out of the way before you could expose him. Son of a bitch, murmured Gabriel. And it worked. You disappeared right after the accusations went public. Everyone assumed you had run away from the shame or something. The case about the medicine was forgotten. Gabriel sat down heavily on a box, processing it all. So he hadn't disappeared out of cowardice. He had been a victim. Harrison hadn't just destroyed his reputation, but had done something that made him lose his memory completely and spend 3 years on the streets. But what? How had Harrison done that? Rachel, do you remember the last time you saw me? Before I disappeared. She thought for a moment. It was a few days after the accusations. You were very stressed, obviously. You had a meeting scheduled with the hospital board to defend yourself. I remember you said you were going to show proof of the medication scheme. You were going to try to turn things around. And did I go to that meeting? I don't know. You disappeared before it happened. You just stopped showing up and no one ever saw you again. Gabriel felt frustration growing. He was starting to put the puzzle together, but important pieces were still missing. Can I make copies of these documents? He asked. Rachel hesitated. What are you going to do with them? I'm going to use them to prove what Harrison did, to get justice. And how are you going to do that if you have no credibility? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Rachel sighed. Okay. But promise me you'll be careful. If Harrison finds out you have these documents... I know, I'll be careful. Rachel made copies of everything and put them in a folder for Gabriel to take. As he was leaving, she called out to him one more time. Dr. Gabriel, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't do anything when you disappeared. I should have taken these documents to the police. I should have fought for you. But I was scared and... I understand, Gabriel interrupted. I don't blame you for anything. You just did what you thought was necessary to protect yourself. Still, I'm sorry. Gabriel returned to Sarah's apartment with the folder of documents under his arm. His head was spinning with all the information. He was finally starting to understand what had happened 3 years ago. But there was still one big unanswered question. How had he lost his memory? That night, after Lily went to sleep, Gabriel told Sarah everything. She listened carefully, her expression growing more and more concerned. So this Harrison not only fabricated accusations against you, but was also involved in a scheme that put patients at risk, she summarized. This is very serious, Gabriel. You need to take this to the police. And say what? That I'm a guy who spent 3 years on the streets. I don't remember anything, but I have documents that prove a scheme from years ago. Who's going to believe me? There has to be someone. A lawyer? A prosecutor? Someone who will listen to your story? Maybe. But first I need to recover my memory. I need to remember what happened that day I disappeared. Because there's something there, something important I haven't discovered yet. Sarah agreed and went to sleep, but Gabriel stayed up late leafing through the documents Rachel had given him. There was something there, something his mind was trying to grasp, but couldn't. And then he saw a signature at the end of one of the documents. Dr. Harrison Vance, authorized to withdraw medication from stock. The handwriting was the same as he had seen on another document, one of those that had been used to accuse him of negligence. The exact same handwriting. Gabriel took the old articles from Lily's album and compared them. Yes, they were identical, which meant Harrison had personally falsified at least part of the documents used against Gabriel. It was a small piece of evidence, circumstantial perhaps, but it was something. A thread he could pull. In the following days, Gabriel tried to contact lawyers. Most didn't even want to hear him out. Some listened to his story with skepticism and said they couldn't help. One even suggested he seek psychiatric help before making such serious accusations. It was frustrating and humiliating, but Gabriel didn't give up, until he found Mr. Julian Thorne, a lawyer of about 50, who primarily worked on human rights cases and social injustices. Julian received him in his modest office and listened to the entire story without interrupting. When Gabriel finished, the lawyer was silent for a long moment. "It's an incredible story," he finally said, "and I believe you." "You believe me?" "Yes. I've seen enough injustice in my career to know that the truth is sometimes stranger than fiction, and your story, however improbable, has consistency. You have documents, witnesses, a clear motive for the crime. You have a narrative that makes sense." Gabriel felt hope for the first time in days. "So you can help me. I can try. But it will be difficult. Very difficult. Harrison has resources, power, connections. You have almost nothing. Your word against his, and he has far more credibility at the moment. But the documents help, but they aren't definitive proof of anything without context. We'll need more. We'll need witnesses willing to speak officially. We'll need more evidence, and we'll need you to recover your memory, because what happened on that day you disappeared could be the key piece to everything." "How do I do that? How do I recover the memory of something I don't remember?" "Sometimes memory returns on its own when a person is ready. Sometimes it needs a trigger. Therapy can help. Hypnosis in some cases. Returning to familiar places. Meeting people from your past." Gabriel nodded, absorbing that. "How much do you charge?" Julian smiled. "Normally, far more than you can afford. But this case has interested me, and I don't like seeing powerful people stepping on the vulnerable. Let's do it this way. I'll help you pro bono for now. If we manage to win the case and you receive some compensation or return to work, you pay me. Otherwise, you owe me nothing." "Why are you doing this?" "Because I believe everyone deserves justice. And because, honestly, challenges motivate me. This case is quite a challenge." Gabriel left Julian's office feeling lighter than he had in weeks. Finally, he had someone on his side, someone with the knowledge and resources to help. Julian immediately began working on the case. He sought out Mrs. Gable and Rachel for formal interviews. He spoke with Dr. Arthur. He began building a case, even knowing crucial pieces were still missing. Meanwhile, Gabriel tried to recover his memory. He returned to the hospital several times, walking the halls, trying to feel some familiarity. Nothing. He tried to go back to the address where he lived before, but the building had been sold and renovated. He didn't recognize anything. It was frustrating and draining. But Gabriel kept trying. One afternoon, he was walking through the neighborhood where he lived with Sarah when he saw something. A small, poorly maintained clinic with a faded sign that read, "Community Health Clinic." Something about that site made his heart race. Gabriel crossed the street and stood in front of the clinic, just looking. An old stooped woman came out, being helped by a younger woman. They passed by Gabriel, and the old woman stopped, looking at him intently. "Dr. Gabriel?" she asked, her voice trembling. Gabriel looked at her, trying to recognize her. Nothing. "Yes, that's me. My God, I thought I'd never see you again." Tears began to fall from her eyes. "You saved my grandson, remember? He had a brain tumor, and no hospital would operate because we didn't have insurance. But you operated for free. You said a child couldn't wait. Gabriel felt something stir inside him, a feeling, perhaps a memory, but very distant and vague. I'm sorry, but I don't remember. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that you're alive. Everyone here thought you had... She didn't finish the sentence. But you're alive and you're well. The young woman beside the old woman was also crying now. I'm Maya. I was the one who took my grandfather that day. You were so kind, so patient. You explained everything, calmed us down. And on the day of the surgery, you operated for 8 hours and then stayed even longer just to make sure everything was okay. Gabriel had heard this story before. It was almost identical to what Sarah had told him about Lily's surgery. Did he do this for all his patients? Dedicate himself completely, without thinking of his own exhaustion or inconvenience? How is your grandson now? He asked. Well, the old woman smiled through her tears. He's 12, studies hard, wants to be a doctor just like you when he grows up. I'm glad to hear that. Are you going to come back to work here at the clinic? Asked Maya. You're so missed. After you left, no doctor as dedicated as you came. I worked here. You did. 3 times a week for free. You saw anyone who needed it, no matter if they had money or not. This clinic was going to close a few years ago for lack of a doctor, but then you started coming and it reopened. When you disappeared, it almost closed again. They managed to bring in other doctors, but it's not the same. That explained a lot. Gabriel didn't just perform free surgeries at the hospital, he also worked for free at a community clinic. How many hours a week did he dedicate to that? And how did he still have the time and energy to maintain his career at the main hospital? May I go in? Asked Gabriel, looking at the clinic. Just to see. Of course, I'll go with you. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. They led him inside. The clinic was small and very simple. A waiting room with old chairs, 2 tiny exam rooms, a basic procedure room, but it was clean and there were plants in the windows, trying to make the place more welcoming. You always saw patients in that room over there, Maya pointed. We left everything exactly the same, hoping that one day you'd come back. Gabriel entered the exam room. It was Spartan, with just an old desk, chairs, and an exam table. But on the walls were photos, dozens of them. Smiling children, grateful families, captured moments of joy and healing. And in all of them, Gabriel was present, always smiling, always surrounded by people who clearly adored him. Gabriel ran his fingers over one of the photos. He was holding a newborn baby, and the expression on his face was one of pure happiness. Who was that man? How had he turned into the confused beggar who woke up on the streets 3 years later? Do you remember anything? The old lady asked hopefully. No, admitted Gabriel, but I'm starting to understand who I was, and I want to try to be that person again. You still are, insisted Maya. No matter what happened, you're still Dr. Gabriel who saved so many lives, who truly cared. That doesn't change. Gabriel wasn't so sure, but he thanked her for her words. Before leaving, the old woman hugged him tightly. Thank you for coming back, she whispered. Thank you for being alive. That night, Gabriel told Sarah about the clinic and the people he met. She listened carefully, and then grew thoughtful. You know there are a lot of people out there you helped, right? She said. It's not just me and Lily. It's dozens, maybe hundreds. And if they knew you were back, I'm sure they'd do anything to help you. But how can they help? It's not like they can give me back my memory or my career. No, but they can testify to your character. They can show the world what kind of person you were and are. When Mr. Thorne takes your case public, these people could be your best defense against Harrison's lies. Gabriel thought about it. She was right. He wasn't alone. He had a whole community of people he had helped, who remembered him with gratitude and affection. How do we find all these people? He asked. I'll spread the word, said Sarah with determination, on social media, in neighborhood groups, everywhere. I'll tell them you're back and need help. You'll see a lot of people will come forward. And that's exactly what happened. Sarah made a simple post. Dr. Gabriel Sterling, who saved the lives of so many children and helped so many people, is back. He needs our help now. Within hours, the post had been shared dozens of times. People began commenting, sharing their own stories. He operated on my son and didn't charge a thing. He saved my niece when no other doctor would see her. He was the only one who cared when my family was desperate. In 2 days, more than 50 people had contacted them, wanting to help in some way. Some offered money, others clothes, some even a place to stay. But the most important thing was the stories. Each of these people had a story about how Gabriel had changed their lives. Julian was excited when Gabriel told him about it. "This is perfect," said the lawyer. "This shows your character, your dedication, your competence. No accusation of negligence will stand when we have dozens of witnesses talking about how careful and dedicated you were. But it still doesn't prove Harrison fabricated the accusations. Not directly, but it creates an alternative narrative. It shows you weren't the kind of careless doctor who would make the mistake that was alleged. And when we combine that with the documents about the medication scheme, we'll have a much more complete story." Gabriel felt hope growing inside him. Maybe there really was a chance. Maybe he could get justice. But then, on a quiet afternoon, everything changed. Gabriel was coming back from the market, carrying bags for Sarah, when he noticed a black car parked in front of the building. It wasn't particularly suspicious, but something about it made Gabriel slow down. The car door opened and Harrison Vance got out. Gabriel stopped immediately. His first instinct was to turn around and run, but he forced himself to stand still. He couldn't keep being afraid of that man. "Gabriel." Harrison smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "What a coincidence finding you here." "It's not a coincidence," said Gabriel, keeping his distance. "You followed me. You're underestimating me." "I didn't need to follow you. It was easy to find out where you're living. You're not exactly discreet, making posts on social media, mobilizing dozens of people. What do you want?" Harrison took a few steps toward Gabriel. "I want to give you one last chance to be sensible. You're making a lot of noise, Gabriel. You're bothering people. And when powerful people are bothered, bad things tend to happen." "Is that a threat?" "It's a friendly warning," Harrison shrugged. "You can continue down this path, making accusations you won't be able to prove, gathering people to testify about how wonderful you were. But in the end, it won't change anything. You disappeared 3 years ago. Your career is over. Your medical license is suspended. You're nothing more than a vagrant trying to relive past glories. Or you can stop while you still have some dignity. Accept that your life took a different turn, make peace with it, and start something new. Far from here. Far from me." "Why are you so afraid?" asked Gabriel. "If you did nothing wrong, why are you so desperate to make me disappear again?" Harrison's eyes hardened. "I'm not afraid of anything. I'm just tired of your stubbornness. You were always too stubborn for your own good." "How did you do it?" Gabriel took a step forward. "How did you make me lose my memory? Because it wasn't just the false accusations, was it? You did something else, something that made me vanish completely." Harrison was silent for a moment, studying Gabriel. Then he smiled again, a cold, calculating smile. "You really don't remember, do you? It's incredible what the human brain does under extreme pressure. Sometimes it just shuts down, disconnects from reality. It's a form of protection. Stop talking in riddles and tell me what happened." "No," Harrison turned back to the car. "I think it's better you remain in the dark. It's crueler this way, don't you think? Knowing you had a life, that you were someone important but not being able to remember the details, it's a much more effective torture than anything physical." "I will find out," said Gabriel, his voice trembling with anger. "I will find out what you did, and I will make you pay for it." "Good luck with that." Harrison got into the car. "But let me warn you again. If you continue to get in my way, I'll have to take more drastic measures. And this time, I won't be as gentle as I was last time." The car drove off, leaving Gabriel standing on the sidewalk trembling. It wasn't just from anger, it was also from fear. Harrison had clearly done something 3 years ago, something that resulted in Gabriel completely losing his memory and living on the streets, and he was willing to do it again. Gabriel went up to the apartment and told Sarah everything. She turned pale. You need to go to the police. Now. That was a direct threat. And say what? He didn't say anything specific, just made insinuations. The police won't do anything. Then what? You're going to wait for him to do something worse? No. I'm going to speed up our investigation. The faster we get evidence against him, the safer I'll be. Or the more in danger, murmured Sarah. Gabriel knew she was right, but he had no choice. He couldn't stop now, not when he was so close to discovering the truth. Julian was also worried when he learned of Harrison's visit. You need to be very careful, the lawyer warned. That man is dangerous. He already destroyed you once and clearly has no qualms about doing it again. I know, but I can't stop now. I'm not asking you to stop, just to be careful. Don't go out alone, especially at night. Always keep someone informed of your whereabouts and document any contact he tries to make. Gabriel agreed. In the following days, he took extra precautions. He always went out with someone, kept Sarah informed of his movements, and began recording all conversations on his phone in case Harrison tried something again. But the days passed without incident. It even began to seem like Harrison had given up, until the night Lily got sick. Gabriel was sleeping on the couch when he heard Sarah scream. He jumped up and ran to her room. Lily was in bed, convulsing. Her eyes rolled back, her body shaking uncontrollably. "Call an ambulance," shouted Gabriel, already moving toward the girl. Sarah picked up the phone with trembling hands, while Gabriel turned Lily onto her side, making sure she wouldn't choke. He had seen seizures before. Somewhere in his memory told him that. He knew what to do. The seizure lasted about 2 minutes, which felt like an eternity. When it finally stopped, Lily went limp and unresponsive. Gabriel checked her pulse. It was weak, but present. "The ambulance is coming," said Sarah, crying. "What's happening to her?" "She's never had a seizure before." "I don't know." Gabriel kept his fingers on Lily's wrist, monitoring. It could be a fever, it could be something neurological, it could be many things. The ambulance arrived 15 minutes later. The paramedics took over, put Lily on the stretcher and took her to the nearest hospital. Gabriel and Sarah went along. In the emergency room, Lily was immediately taken to an exam room. The doctors ran tests, drew blood, checked her vitals. Gabriel stayed outside with Sarah, both in a state of shock. "She'll be okay." Gabriel tried to comfort, but his own words sounded hollow. "The doctors here are good. She'll be okay." Hours passed. Gabriel got a few cups of coffee from the machine. Neither of them could drink it. They just sat there, waiting, praying. Finally, a doctor came out to speak with them. "Her condition is stable," he said. "But we're still trying to understand what caused the seizure. The initial tests didn't show anything obvious." "What do you mean?" asked Sarah. "There has to be a cause. And there is, we just haven't found it yet. We'll run more tests. CT scan, MRI, whatever is necessary. But for now she's sleeping and stable." "Can I see her?" Sarah was on the verge of collapse. "Yes, you can, but try to be quiet. She needs to rest." Gabriel stayed outside while Sarah went in to see her daughter. He leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. This was all too much. Lily couldn't be sick. Not now. Not after everything she had been through. And then a horrible thought crossed his mind. What if this wasn't an accident? What if Harrison had something to do with it? No, that was paranoia. Harrison was a bad man, but he wouldn't harm an innocent child. He wouldn't do that. Or would he? Gabriel shook his head, trying to push those thoughts away. He was letting fear take over. Lily had gotten sick, it happens. It had nothing to do with Harrison or that whole situation, but the doubt remained there, planted in his mind, growing like a poisonous seed. The doctors kept Lily hospitalized for 3 days, running tests. They found something strange in her blood, elevated levels of something that shouldn't be there, but they couldn't identify exactly what. "It's as if she was exposed to some chemical substance," the lead doctor explained, "but we can't determine which one." "What do you eat at home? Did she come into contact with any cleaning products, poisonous plants?" Sarah shook her head no to each question. "Nothing different. Everything's normal. It doesn't make sense." Gabriel watched, that seed of doubt growing even larger. chemical substance, something Lily was exposed to that they couldn't identify. That seemed very specific, very intentional. When Lily was finally discharged, still without a definitive diagnosis but apparently recovered, Gabriel made a decision. "I need to talk to you," he said to Sarah that night. "About Lily." "What is it?" "I think she was poisoned." Sarah looked at him as if he had gone mad. "What? Gabriel, the doctors didn't find any poison. They found something abnormal in her blood, some chemical they couldn't identify, and this happened right after Harrison threatened me." "You think Harrison poisoned my daughter?" Sarah's voice was rising. "That's crazy." "Is it? That man fabricated accusations against me, made me disappear for 3 years, is involved in a counterfeit medication scheme. Do you really think he wouldn't be capable of harming a child to scare me?" Sarah went pale. No, that's too much. That can't be true." "I hope it's not. I really do. But what if it is? What if he's willing to do anything to silence me? You and Lily are in danger because of me. So what are you suggesting, that you leave?" "Maybe it's for the best. If I'm not here, he has no reason to go after you." "Then he wins." Sarah was angry now. "That's what he wants, to make you leave, give up, disappear again. And you're just going to let him. I don't want to put you at risk. And we don't want you to give up, Gabriel. You saved my daughter's life. Let me repay that. Let me help you get justice. Please don't go." Gabriel felt emotion tighten his throat. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. We face this together. You, me, Lily, Julian, all the people you've helped. Together, not alone." Gabriel hugged Sarah, feeling profound gratitude for this woman and the girl who had taken him in when he had nothing. They were willing to risk everything to help him. It was the most selfless thing anyone had ever done for him. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for believing in me." But even as he thanked her, Gabriel made another decision. He would make sure Harrison could never harm Sarah or Lily again, whatever the cost. Julian was equally disturbed when Gabriel told him about Lily's illness and his suspicions. "We need proof," said the lawyer. "If you really think Harrison poisoned the girl, we need concrete evidence. Did the doctors keep blood samples?" "They did." "Good. I'll have an independent lab run a more detailed analysis. If there's something there, we'll find it. And if we find it, then we have grounds to involve the authorities. Intentional poisoning is a serious crime. Even Harrison won't be able to escape that." But the following weeks brought no clear answers. The independent lab found the same anomalies as the hospital, but couldn't identify the specific substance. It was as if someone had used something very rare or very new, something not in the toxicology databases. Gabriel grew more frustrated each day. He knew, deep down, that Harrison had something to do with it, but he couldn't prove it. Lily, for her part, recovered completely. She went back to school, back to her normal routine. But Gabriel noticed that Sarah was now always vigilant, always worried. She checked the food before serving it, checked the water, wouldn't let Lily go out alone. Fear had settled into their lives, and Harrison must have been loving it. One day, Gabriel decided to do something risky. He went back to St. Jude's General Hospital, but this time he didn't go to the reception. Instead, he entered from the side through a service door he saw staff using. He managed to get to the pharmacy department without being noticed. He hid behind some boxes, watching. He wanted to see with his own eyes how things worked there, if there was still something suspicious going on. For an hour, he saw nothing out of the ordinary. Staff coming and going, picking up medications, logging everything on computers. Everything seemed very professional and organized, until he saw a familiar face. Rachel. She was there, talking to one of the staff members. But why? She didn't work at the hospital anymore. Gabriel waited until she left and then discreetly followed her. Rachel went to the parking lot and got into her car. She was about to leave when Gabriel knocked on the window. She was startled, but rolled down the window when she recognized him. "Gabriel, what are you doing here?" "I saw you inside." "Why were you at the hospital?" Rachel averted her gaze. "It's nothing." "Rachel, please, if you know something." She sighed heavily. "I shouldn't be here. But one of the pharmacy workers is my friend. He texted me saying he had information I needed to know." What information? Harrison is doing it again. The medication scheme. He thought with you out of the way, he could do it without getting caught. But my friend noticed inconsistencies in the records. The same kinds of inconsistencies we saw 3 years ago. Gabriel felt anger boil inside him. He didn't learn a thing. He's doing the same thing, putting patients at risk for profit. Worse than that, Rachel looked around as if checking if anyone was listening. My friend said Harrison is trying to cover it up. He's altering records, forging documents, doing everything he can to hide what he's doing. We need to stop this. How? You don't have a position. I don't work there anymore. Our friend who's reporting it could lose his job. Who will believe us? Julian, my lawyer. We take this to him. He'll know what to do. Rachel thought for a moment and then nodded. Okay, I'll ask my friend to copy all the documents he can, but it has to be discreet. If Harrison finds out, I know, we'll be careful. But being careful proved more difficult than Gabriel expected. A few days later, Rachel's friend was fired. The official reason was cost-cutting, but everyone knew the truth. Harrison had discovered he was leaking information. Fortunately, the employee had already managed to copy several documents before being fired. He gave them to Rachel, who passed them to Gabriel, who took them to Julian. The lawyer was excited to see it all. This is excellent. Along with Rachel's old documents, we have proof of a pattern of criminal behavior. Harrison isn't just involved in an isolated scheme. He's been doing this systematically for years. So we can sue him? We can do more than that. We can request a criminal investigation. Diversion of medication, document forgery, putting patients at risk. These are serious crimes. He could go to jail. When? I need to organize everything first, build a solid case. But in a few weeks, maybe a month, we'll be able to file the formal complaint. Gabriel felt hope and fear at the same time. Hope of finally getting justice. Fear of what Harrison might do when he found out he was being investigated. That month was tense. Gabriel could barely sleep. Every time he saw a black car on the street, his heart raced. Every time Lily coughed or complained of a headache, he panicked. He was constantly on edge, expecting Harrison to do something drastic. But nothing happened. The days passed normally. Lily went to school, Sarah went to work. Gabriel helped around the house and kept researching, trying to recover his memories. And then, suddenly, something changed. Gabriel was in the apartment's living room, looking out the window when he saw something on the street. A man standing across the way, looking directly at the building. It was Harrison. But he wasn't alone. There was another man with him, older, elegantly dressed. They were talking and occasionally looking up, as if assessing the building. Gabriel stepped back from the window, his heart pounding. What were they planning? He took a picture with his phone, zooming in on the other man. He sent it to Julian with a message. "Who is this guy with Harrison?" The reply came half an hour later. "Dr. Silas Blackwood. He's the hospital's general director." A chill ran down Gabriel's spine. If the director was involved, it meant the scheme was much bigger than they had imagined. It wasn't just Harrison acting alone. There were other people protecting him, profiting from the scheme. That made everything much more dangerous and much more complicated. "We might have a problem," said Julian when Gabriel called him. "If the hospital director is involved, it will be much harder to get the authorities to investigate. He has a lot of influence, many connections. But he can't be above the law." Technically, no, but in practice, people with power can get away with a lot of things that ordinary people couldn't. So we give up? No. But we need to be even more careful, and we need something undeniable, some proof so strong that not even his connections can bury it. Like what? I don't know yet, but we'll find it. One way or another, we'll find it. Gabriel hung up the phone, feeling defeated. Every time he thought he was making progress, he discovered the problem was even bigger than he imagined. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That night he couldn't sleep again. He stayed on the sofa, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything he had discovered. Harrison wasn't just a jealous doctor who had fabricated accusations. He was part of something bigger, a scheme that involved powerful people and put lives at risk daily. And Gabriel, a man with no memory and no resources, was trying to bring it all down alone. It seemed impossible. But then he thought of Lily. He thought of the little girl who had never lost faith, who prayed for him every night, even without knowing if her prayers would be answered. He thought of Sarah, who had taken him in without a second thought. He thought of all those families he had helped years ago and who still remembered him with gratitude. He wasn't alone. He never had been. And it was for those people that he had to keep fighting. Gabriel got up from the sofa and went to the window. The city was quiet, illuminated only by streetlights. Somewhere out there was Harrison, probably sleeping soundly, with no remorse for what he had done. Somewhere was the hospital director, protecting his interests, not caring about the consequences. But also, somewhere out there were all those people Gabriel had helped. People who deserved to know the truth. People who deserved justice. And Gabriel would get it for them, whatever the cost. The day dawned with disturbing news. Julian called early, his voice tense. "Did you see the paper today?" "No, why?" "There's an article about you." Gabriel grabbed his phone and searched. It didn't take long to find. The headline read, "Missing ex-doctor reappears making accusations against former colleague." The article painted Gabriel as a mentally unstable man who had disappeared 3 years ago after accusations of negligence and was now back making baseless accusations against Harrison. It mentioned that he had lived on the streets, that he had no documents, that he seemed to be suffering from delusions. Harrison was quoted saying, "It's sad to see a colleague I respected in such a mental state. I hope he gets the psychiatric help he clearly needs." Gabriel felt anger and humiliation reading that. Harrison was getting ahead of him, creating a narrative where Gabriel was the problem, not him. "He's destroying your credibility before you even make your complaint," said Julian. "It's a smart tactic, I admit, but we can counterattack." "How?" "We go public with our evidence. We can't wait any longer. We'll hold a press conference, present all the documents, bring the witnesses. We'll show that you're not a madman making baseless accusations." Gabriel hesitated. Going public meant exposing himself completely. It meant there was no turning back. But Julian was right. They couldn't wait any longer. "Okay, let's do it." The press conference was scheduled for 3 days later. Julian worked frantically to organize everything. Documents were printed and organized into folders. Witnesses were contacted and prepared to speak. A space was rented that could accommodate journalists and cameras. Gabriel spent those 3 days nervous. What if no one believed him? What if this made everything worse? But there was no other choice. The path was set. On the morning of the press conference, Gabriel dressed in the best clothes he had. Sarah had bought him a simple suit days before, anticipating he would need something more formal. She helped him with his tie, her hands trembling slightly. "You're going to do great," she said. "You'll tell the truth and people will believe you." "What if they don't?" "They will, because the truth always comes out in the end." Lily appeared in her pajamas, still sleepy. She hugged Gabriel's legs. "You don't have to be afraid," the little girl said. "God is with you." Gabriel knelt down to her level. "How can you be so sure?" "Because God answered my prayers and brought you back. Why would he do that if it wasn't for you to do something important? You're here for a reason, Dr. Gabriel. You're here to help people like you always did." The child's simple words touched Gabriel deeply. Maybe she was right. Maybe there really was a purpose to all of this. The press conference was held in a small auditorium. Julian had invited several media outlets, and Gabriel was surprised to see that most of them had shown up. About 20 journalists were present, with cameras and recorders, ready to document everything. Gabriel sat at a table at the front of the room, Julian at his side. Behind them, a large screen where documents and photos would be projected. "Good morning, everyone," Julian began. "Thank you for coming. Today we will present information regarding a case of great public importance, a case involving fraud, the diversion of medications, and the deliberate destruction of a dedicated doctor's career." The journalists began scribbling furiously. Julian continued, presenting a summary of the situation. Then he gave the floor to Gabriel. Gabriel took a deep breath and began to tell his story. from the free surgeries he performed to the discovery of the medication scheme, the false accusations, his disappearance, the 3 years on the streets, and finally his return and the discovery that Harrison was continuing the scheme. It was difficult, exposing himself like that, admitting his vulnerability, showing his wounds, but Gabriel continued, keeping his voice steady. When he finished, Julian began projecting documents onto the screen. Medication records that didn't match up, forged signatures, evidence that expensive drugs were being replaced with cheaper or counterfeit versions, with the profit being pocketed by people at the hospital. Then the witnesses began to speak. Mrs. Gable told what she saw at the hospital. Rachel presented her own evidence. Her friend, who was fired, explained how Harrison was repeating the scheme, and then the families began to speak. Sarah told how Gabriel had saved Lily for free. The grandmother of the boy with the brain tumor explained how Gabriel had refused to let her grandson go without treatment. One by one, more than 10 people came to the microphone to tell their stories. It was powerful, moving, impossible to ignore. The journalists asked questions, some challenging, others genuinely curious. Gabriel answered them all with honesty. Yes, he had lived on the streets. No, he hadn't fully recovered his memories. Yes, there was a risk his accusations would be seen as the revenge of an unstable person, but the evidence was there. They weren't just empty accusations. They were documented facts, corroborated by multiple independent witnesses. The press conference lasted almost 3 hours. When it was over, Gabriel was exhausted but also relieved. He had done his part. Now it was up to the journalists and the public to decide who to believe. The stories started coming out that same afternoon, and the reaction was surprising. Most outlets gave the story prominence, presenting it in a balanced way but clearly intrigued by the evidence presented. Social media exploded with discussions about the case. Many people were outraged at the possibility of counterfeit drugs being used on patients. Others were moved by the stories of the families Gabriel had helped. And there were also those who remained skeptical, saying it was just the word of an unstable man against that of a respected doctor. Harrison gave his response the next day. An interview where he denied everything, said Gabriel was mentally ill and that the documents were forgeries. He presented himself as calm and confident, the kind of professional people wanted to believe. But something was different now. People started asking questions. Investigative journalists started digging deeper. The hospital was forced to release a statement saying it was conducting an internal investigation into the allegations. Gabriel knew this was just the beginning. The battle would be long and difficult, but at least now he had the public's attention. He was no longer an isolated voice shouting into the void. In the following days, more people started coming forward. Patients who had had unexplained complications with medications, hospital staff who had seen strange things but stayed silent out of fear. Each new voice made the case stronger. And then, something unexpected happened. One of the hospital doctors, someone who worked directly with Harrison, asked to speak with Julian in private. His name was Dr. Paul Rivers, a man of about 50 who seemed to be carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Gabriel went with Julian to the meeting. They gathered in the lawyer's office, all the curtains drawn. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," Paul began, his voice low. "I know I have no right to ask for anything after staying silent for so long." "Why did you stay silent?" asked Gabriel directly. Paul looked at him and there was genuine shame in his eyes. "Because I was afraid, and because, at first, I actually believed the accusations against you. Harrison was very convincing. He showed documents, brought witnesses, created a perfect narrative. I believed you had committed negligence. But then you discovered the truth. Not immediately. It took time. I started noticing inconsistencies, patients having complications they shouldn't have, medications that seemed less effective than they should be. At first I thought it was just bad luck, but there were too many cases to be a coincidence." "And you did nothing?" "I tried to talk to Harrison about my concerns. He told me I was being paranoid, that there was no pattern, and then he started subtly threatening me, talking about how doctors who caused trouble tended to lose their positions. I saw what happened to others who questioned him. I was a coward, and I stayed silent." Gabriel felt anger but also understanding. He knew what it was like to be afraid of Harrison. "Why are you speaking now?" "Because after your press conference, my conscience won't leave me alone. I saw all those families talking about how you helped them, and I thought of all the families I could have helped if I'd had the courage to speak sooner. I can't live with it anymore." "What do you know?" asked Julian, already picking up a recorder. "And are you willing to testify officially?" "I am. I know I'll lose my job. I'll probably have trouble working at other hospitals too, but it's the price I have to pay." Paul began to tell his story. He had detailed information about how the scheme worked. Harrison wasn't working alone. There was a group of people involved. The hospital director, some suppliers, even some members of the administration. They were diverting expensive medications, replacing them with cheaper versions, and pocketing the difference. Wealthy private patients received the quality drugs. Patients on the public system or with simpler insurance plans received the counterfeit ones. It was a calculated and cruel operation, putting the most vulnerable people at greater risk. "And there's more," said Paolo, hesitant, "about what happened to you 3 years ago." Gabriel leaned forward, his heart racing. "What? You know what happened to me?" "I don't know everything, but I know part of it. The day you disappeared, you had a meeting scheduled with the board. You were going to present your evidence about the medication scheme. Harrison was desperate. He needed to stop you." "How did he do it?" "I don't know exactly, but that night I heard Harrison talking with the director. They were talking about how you wouldn't be a problem anymore, about how they had resolved the situation permanently." "You think they did something to me? Physically?" "I don't know. But the next day, you were gone. And Harrison was far too relieved, jubilant even, as if he had escaped something terrible." Gabriel felt a chill run through his body. So Harrison really had done something 3 years ago, something that resulted in his amnesia and disappearance. "But what? Do you have any proof of this?" asked Julian. "No. It's just what I heard. But I can testify under oath." "It'll be enough," said Julian, thoughtful. "Together with everything else we have, it'll be enough to at least force a real investigation." With Paolo's testimony, Julian finally had what he needed to take the case to the authorities. He prepared a formal complaint and submitted it to the district attorney's office. He included all the documents, all the witnesses, all the evidence they had collected. The prosecutor assigned to the case was a woman in her 40s named District Attorney Evelyn Clark. She had a reputation for being tough but fair, someone not intimidated by political or economic pressure. The first meeting with her was tense. Evelyn listened to everything with a serious expression, asking pointed questions, analyzing each document carefully. "It's a complex case," she said at the end. "It involves powerful people, crimes that happened years ago, and a victim whose credibility may be questioned in court." "But the evidence is solid," argued Julian. "It's largely circumstantial. The documents prove irregularities, but connecting those irregularities directly to Dr. Harrison will require more work. And as for what happened to Mr. Sterling 3 years ago, we have only speculation and indirect testimony. So you won't investigate?" Gabriel couldn't hide the disappointment in his voice. "I didn't say that." Evelyn looked at him. "I will investigate, but I need you to understand this will take time. I'll need warrants to access hospital records. I'll need to interrogate witnesses. I'll need to build a case that is unassailable in court. I can't just arrest Harrison based on what we have now." "How much time?" "Months. Perhaps more than a year. Cases like this are marathons, not sprints." Gabriel left that meeting frustrated, but trying to hold on to hope. At least there was an official investigation now. It was progress, even if slow, but Harrison didn't stand still waiting. When he learned of the investigation, he counterattacked. He filed a defamation lawsuit against Gabriel, claiming the false accusations were destroying his reputation and career. The lawsuit demanded an absurd amount in damages, an amount Gabriel obviously didn't have. It was an intimidation tactic, an attempt to make Gabriel back down out of pure fear of the financial consequences, but it was also a mistake on Harrison's part. Because by suing Gabriel, he opened the door for the entire case to be discussed in court, and in court, under oath, the lies would have a much harder time holding up. He overreached, said Julian with a smile. "He thought he could scare you, but he actually gave us an opportunity. While the district attorney's investigation moved slowly, the defamation lawsuit began to unfold. Hearings were scheduled, witnesses were called, and all of this was being followed by the media, which had become deeply interested in the case. Gabriel's story had touched many people. The dedicated doctor who helped the poor was betrayed by a jealous colleague, lost everything, lived on the streets for 3 years, and was now fighting to regain his honor. It was the kind of narrative that captured the public imagination. Social media divided between supporters of Gabriel and of Harrison. Groups were created. Online petitions began circulating, calling for a deeper investigation. Others demanded Gabriel be sued for slander. It was a media circus, and Gabriel felt lost in the middle of it all. He didn't want fame or attention. He just wanted justice. He just wanted to understand what had happened to him. One night, unable to sleep, Gabriel decided to take a walk. Sarah and Lily were already asleep. He left quietly, with no particular destination, just needing fresh air and space to think. He ended up walking to the overpass, where he used to sleep when he was on the streets. He stood there looking at the space under the bridge where he had spent so many nights. Other homeless people were there now, wrapped in old blankets, trying to shield themselves from the night's cold. Gabriel approached and recognized some faces. People he had met during his years on the streets. People who had nowhere to go, who had been forgotten by society. "Gabriel?" a rough voice called to him. It was Old Man Joe, an older man who used to share food with Gabriel when he had some. "Is that really you?" "It's me, Joe. Heard you became somebody important again. Saw your picture in the paper. I don't know if I'm important. I'm just trying to understand what happened to me." Joe laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "For folks living out here, nobody wants to know our story. Nobody cares about what happened that brought us to the streets. You're lucky to have people who care." Gabriel sat down next to Joe, not minding the dirt on the ground. "You're right. I am very lucky. And when all this is over, I want to do something. I want to help people like you, like I was. You'll forget. When you get back to your comfortable life, you'll forget we exist." "I won't. I promise I won't." Joe looked at him with skepticism, but also with something that could be hope. If you can actually make a difference, that'll be more than anyone else has done. Gabriel returned to the apartment that night with renewed determination. It wasn't just about him. It was about all those invisible people. It was about the patients receiving bad medicine. It was about the families who couldn't afford treatment. It was about building a better system. The first hearing of the defamation lawsuit was an event. The courtroom was packed with journalists and onlookers. Gabriel entered with Julian at his side, trying to ignore the camera flashes and shouted questions. Harrison was already there, seated with his team of expensive lawyers. He looked at Gabriel with a confident smile. He thought he was going to win easily. The judge was a serious man in his 60s named Dr. Carlos Mendez. He looked at the crowded room with disapproval. "This courtroom is not a circus," he said sternly. "Anyone causing a disturbance will be removed immediately." The hearing began. Harrison's lawyer presented his case. Gabriel had made serious accusations without sufficient evidence. He had used the media to destroy the reputation of a respected doctor. He was clearly suffering from mental problems resulting from his years on the streets and could not be considered a reliable source. It was an efficient and well-presented argument. Gabriel felt his stomach tighten. What if the judge agreed? But then it was Julian's turn, and the lawyer was prepared. He began by presenting all the evidence they had collected, the documents about the medication scheme, the witness testimonies, the inconsistencies in the original accusations against Gabriel. "Your Honor," said Julian, "this is not a case of defamation. It is a case of a brave man trying to expose a serious crime, and he is being sued precisely to silence him. It is a tactic of intimidation, nothing more." Harrison's lawyer objected furiously. A heated debate followed about the admissibility of evidence, the relevance of testimonies, and legal procedures. At the end of the hearing, the judge did not make an immediate decision. "I will review everything presented today," he said, "and I will schedule new hearings to hear witnesses. This case is too complex for a hasty decision." It was frustrating not to have an immediate resolution, but Julian was optimistic. The judge is taking it seriously. If he were simply dismissing your accusations, he would have done so already. The fact that he wants to hear more witnesses is a good sign. The subsequent hearings stretched on for weeks. Mrs. Gable testified about what she saw at the hospital. Rachel presented her evidence. Paulo Ribeiro told what he knew, even knowing he was sacrificing his career. And then the patients and families began to testify. One by one they told their stories. How Gabriel had helped them when no one else would. How he had saved lives without asking for anything in return. How he was incapable of the negligence he had been accused of. It was powerful and moving. Even the judge, normally impassive, seemed touched. Sarah and Lily testified too. Lily, so small but so brave, told the court how Gabriel had saved her life, how she prayed for him every night, how God had answered her prayers by bringing him back. "He is a hero," said the girl with absolute conviction, "and heroes don't do bad things." Harrison watched everything with an increasingly tense expression. His confident smile had disappeared. He realized he was losing control of the narrative. When it was time for Harrison to testify, he was visibly nervous. Julian questioned him harshly about the inconsistencies in the documents, about the medication scheme, about what happened the night Gabriel disappeared. Harrison denied everything, but his answers were evasive. He contradicted himself several times. And when Julian presented a handwriting analysis showing that Harrison had falsified at least part of the documents used against Gabriel, the doctor almost lost his composure. "This proves nothing," he shouted. "You are trying to incriminate me with fabricated evidence." "Your Honor," Julian turned to the judge calmly, "the evidence speaks for itself, and I believe it clearly shows who the true victim is in this case." The judge called for a recess to review everything. 2 weeks later, he issued his decision. Gabriel was in court with Sarah, Lily, Julian, and dozens of people who supported him. Everyone waited anxiously as the judge read his ruling. "After careful analysis of all the evidence and testimony presented," the judge began, "this court concludes that the accusations made by Mr. Gabriel Sterling do not constitute defamation. The evidence presented is substantial enough to justify his claims that he was the victim of a conspiracy to destroy his career." Gabriel felt his legs go weak. Sarah held his hand tightly. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "this court is forwarding a complete copy of all documents and testimonies presented to the district attorney's office, with a recommendation that the activities of Dr. Harrison Vance and his possible accomplices be criminally investigated. The defamation lawsuit is dismissed, and the defendant, Mr. Gabriel Sterling, is acquitted of all charges. Furthermore, I order the plaintiff, Dr. Harrison Vance, to pay court costs and attorney's fees." The courtroom erupted in celebration. People stood up applauding. Lily jumped into Gabriel's arms, crying and laughing at the same time. Sarah hugged them both, also crying. Harrison left the courtroom with his face red with anger, pursued by journalists shouting questions. Gabriel watched that and felt, not joy at the other's defeat, but relief. Finally, the truth was beginning to come out. With the court's decision, the district attorney's investigation gained new momentum. Evelyn obtained warrants to search all the hospital's records. She began interrogating people, pressuring witnesses, following the money trail, and she discovered much more than she expected. The scheme didn't just involve medications. There was fraud in bids, embezzlement of public funds, overpricing of equipment. It was a system of corruption that had been going on for years. The hospital director was suspended, several employees were arrested, and Harrison, faced with overwhelming evidence, and with several of his accomplices making plea deals, finally began to talk. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he confessed everything: the medication scheme, the falsification of the documents against Gabriel, and finally, what happened that night 3 years ago. Gabriel was called to hear the confession in the presence of Evelyn and Julian. He sat in a room with a glass window, on the other side of which Harrison was sitting with his lawyers. "I want to hear it from your mouth," said Gabriel, his voice trembling. "What did you do to me?" Harrison looked at him, and for the first time there was something resembling remorse on his face. "I was desperate," he began. "You had discovered everything. You had proof. You were going to expose the whole scheme. I would lose everything, my career, my freedom, everything. So you fabricated accusations against me. Yes, I falsified documents, convinced the patient and the family to sue you. I thought it would be enough to discredit you. But you didn't give up. You scheduled that meeting with the board, said you were going to present everything you had discovered. And then I did something terrible. Harrison took a deep breath. I arranged to meet you before the meeting. Said I wanted to talk, to try to resolve things between us. You believed me. You were always that naive, always wanted to believe the best in people. Gabriel felt anger rising, but forced himself to stay calm. He needed to hear everything. We met in an empty parking lot near the hospital, and I put something in your drink. A cocktail of drugs, sedatives, anti-anxiety meds, a few other things. The dose was high enough to make you disoriented, but not enough to kill. Why? Because I wanted you to disappear, but I didn't want to have to deal with a body. I wanted you to just leave and never come back. The drugs would make you confused, possibly cause temporary amnesia. I thought you'd wander around for a few days and then leave town, start a new life somewhere. But it went wrong. It did. The drugs affected you worse than I expected. You entered a severe dissociative state. You completely lost your memory of who you were, and instead of leaving town, you just stayed, living on the streets as if you'd never had another life. Gabriel felt nausea rising. Harrison had deliberately destroyed his mind, his identity, everything he was. And why? For money. For ego. You saw me on the streets? Asked Gabriel. In those 3 years, did you know where I was? I saw you a few times, admitted Harrison. Always by chance when I was passing through town. I saw you begging on street corners, sleeping under bridges, and every time I convinced myself that you were okay, that it was better this way. Better. Gabriel couldn't control his anger now. You took everything from me. My life, my career, my memories, and you thought it was better this way. I know, Harrison's voice was broken now. I know what I did was monstrous. I've carried that guilt every single day. But it was too late to turn back. What could I do? Confess and go to prison. Try to help you and expose everything I had done. You could have done the right thing from the start, said Gabriel, standing up. You could have been honest. You could have been a real doctor, not a criminal in a white coat. I know, and now I will pay for it. Gabriel left that room feeling a strange mix of emotions. Anger, yes, but also sadness, and strangely a certain relief. Finally, he had the answers he was looking for. Finally, he knew the truth. The case went to trial. Harrison was sentenced to 12 years in prison for multiple crimes including fraud, drug diversion, falsifying records, and aggravated assault. The hospital director got 15 years. Several others involved were also convicted. It was a victory, but it didn't bring Gabriel back everything he had lost. He still didn't have his memories back. He still couldn't practice medicine without going through extensive re-evaluation. He still had to rebuild his life, practically from scratch. But at least now he knew who he was. He knew where he had come from. And he had people around him who loved and supported him. The Regional Medical Board decided to overturn Gabriel's suspension and return his medical license. It was a long process, with psychological evaluations, theoretical exams, even a practical test where he had to demonstrate his skills. Gabriel passed everything. His medical knowledge was there, buried somewhere deep in his mind, waiting to be rediscovered. Even without explicit memories, his training had remained. But he decided not to go back to working in big hospitals. Instead, he did something different. With the money he received as compensation from the lawsuit against Harrison and the hospital, Gabriel opened a community clinic. It wasn't the same one he used to work at years ago, but something new, built with purpose. The Hope Wellness Center, as it was called, served primarily low-income people. Some days were completely free. Others, they charged symbolic amounts. Gabriel didn't just want to treat illnesses. He wanted to create a place where people felt cared for, valued, seen. And he didn't work alone. Sarah left her job as a seamstress and came to work at the clinic as the administrator. Lily, now a little older, helped after school, organizing files and playing with children in the waiting room. Mrs. Gable, Paolo, and several others who had testified for Gabriel became volunteers. Even Rachel closed her small pharmacy and opened one inside the clinic, offering medications at cost price. The clinic grew fast. Within a few months, they were seeing hundreds of people a week. Stories began to circulate about the doctor who had lost everything, survived on the streets, and was now dedicating his life to helping those most in need. Gabriel didn't want the fame or attention, but he accepted it because it helped the clinic. Every newspaper article brought more donations. Every interview attracted more volunteers, and every patient they helped was a life transformed. One day, almost a year after the clinic opened, Gabriel was seeing patients when a woman came in with a small child. The child had a high fever and was crying inconsolably. Gabriel examined the boy and quickly realized it was a serious infection. He prepared the medication, administered it, and kept watching until he was sure the boy was improving. The mother cried with relief and gratitude. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much. I didn't have the money to take him to a private hospital, and the urgent care was packed. I didn't know what to do if it weren't for your clinic." "No need to thank me," said Gabriel kindly. "That's what we're here for." When the woman left with her son already improving, Gabriel stood looking out the clinic window. He saw people coming and going, life happening on the street, and for the first time since he woke up on the streets with no memory, he felt complete. He no longer needed the lost memories. He no longer needed to be who he was before. He was who he was now, and that was enough. That night at home with Sarah and Lily, they had dinner together. Lily excitedly told them about her day at school. Sarah complained about a supplier who was delaying a delivery. Gabriel listened to everything with a smile, joining the conversation, making jokes. It was a simple life, but it was a good life. A life with purpose. "Dr. Gabriel," Lily called to him before going to sleep, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, kiddo." "Do you still get sad about not remembering your life before?" Gabriel thought about the question. It was something he often asked himself. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But most of the time, no. Because I realized something. What matters isn't where you came from. It's where you're going, and who you're being along the way." "I like who you are now," said Lily, hugging him. "I like living with us. I like working at the clinic. I like everything." "Me too, Lily. Me too." After she went to sleep, Sarah sat next to Gabriel on the sofa. "Are you happy?" she asked. "I am. Truly. Even without your memories. Even without, because I've built new memories, better ones maybe. Memories of starting over, of overcoming, of love." Sarah smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. "You know you can stay here forever, right? This is your home now. You're part of our family." Gabriel felt emotion tighten his throat. "Thank you. For everything. For taking me in when I had nothing. For believing in me when no one else did. For helping me find my way back. You don't need to thank me. You saved my daughter. Letting you stay with us is the least I can do." "It's not about debts," said Gabriel. "It's about family. And you are my family now." They sat like that for a long time, in a comfortable silence. Outside, the city continued its nightlife, but inside, in that small apartment, there was peace. The following months brought more changes. The clinic continued to grow. They hired more volunteer doctors, expanded their hours, and began offering specialties beyond general practice. Gabriel oversaw everything, but he also continued to see patients daily. Every person who sat across from him was an opportunity to make a difference, and he never tired of it. One day a reporter came to do a story on the clinic. He interviewed Gabriel, filmed the consultations, and spoke with patients. "Why do you do this?" asked the reporter. "You could be working at a big hospital making a lot of money. Why choose to work here with people who can barely pay?" Gabriel thought about the question before answering. Because when you lose everything, like I did, you understand the value of simple things. A smile, a kind word, someone who cares. And these people here, they don't have much in material terms, but they deserve the same care, the same attention, the same respect as any wealthy person in a private hospital. But what about you? Don't you want to recover what you lost? I've already recovered what matters. My dignity, my purpose, my humanity. The rest is just detail. The story aired and touched many people. More donations came in. More volunteers showed up. The clinic became a model of how community medicine should work. And then something unexpected happened. The city mayor came to visit the clinic in person. He was impressed with the work being done and made an offer. The city would help fund the clinic in exchange for expanding services to other needy areas of the city. It was a difficult decision. Expanding meant more responsibility, more pressure, more work. But it also meant helping many more people. Gabriel gathered the entire team to discuss it. Sarah, Lily, the volunteer doctors, all the staff, and together they decided to accept. In the following months, 3 new Hope Wellness Center units opened in different neighborhoods. Each had its own team, but all followed the same principles Gabriel had established. Compassionate care, accessible service, respect for the dignity of every patient. Gabriel divided his time between the 4 units, supervising, training new doctors, ensuring standards were maintained. It was exhausting work, but also deeply rewarding. And somewhere along the way, small memories began to return. Not everything, not completely, but fragments. The smell of a hospital that sparked something familiar. The sound of medical equipment that brought a vague recollection. The face of a patient he felt he had seen before. They were small, disconnected pieces, but they were there. His mind was slowly healing, reassembling the puzzle of who he had been. But Gabriel discovered he no longer needed those memories to feel whole. He was a new person now, forged by the experiences of the last few years. And that person, he realized, was perhaps better than who he had been before. Because now he knew the bottom. He knew pain, loss, vulnerability, and that experience made him a better doctor, a better person. 1 year after the expanded clinics opened, there was a celebration. Hundreds of people attended, patients who had been treated, families who had been helped, volunteers who had dedicated their time. Gabriel was at the center of it all, surrounded by all those people, and felt a deep emotion. He looked around and saw Sarah talking with donors, Lily playing with other children, Mrs. Gable serving food, Robert helping organize the party. He saw all those people who had come together for a common purpose, to help others, and he realized that this was his true family, not blood ties, but ties of shared purpose, of compassion, of love for one's neighbor. During the party, Lily climbed onto the small stage they had set up and asked for silence. "I wanted to say something," she began, her voice small but clear through the microphone. "When I was really little, I almost didn't get to live. My heart was broken and no one could fix it, but then Dr. Gabriel came and he saved me." Tears were already starting to stream down her face. "And then he disappeared, and everyone thought he was gone forever. But I didn't stop asking God to bring him back. Every night I asked, and one day God answered. He was on the street asking for directions when we found him. And ever since then, he's saved not just me again, but hundreds and hundreds of other people." Lily looked directly at Gabriel. "So thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Thank you for being you. Thank you for not giving up, even when everything was hard. Thank you for building this wonderful place where everyone is important and everyone deserves to be cared for. You are my hero, and you always will be." The crowd erupted in applause. Gabriel climbed onto the stage and hugged Lily, both of them crying openly now. Sarah joined them, and the 3 stood there embraced as hundreds of people applauded and cried along. When the applause finally ceased, Gabriel took the microphone. "I don't know how to make pretty speeches," he began, his voice choked. "And I don't consider myself anyone's hero. But I want to say one thing. When I was on the streets, lost and without hope, I thought my life was over. I thought I had no more value, no more purpose. But Lily and Sarah showed me that there is always hope, that even when you lose everything, you can rebuild, you can start over, and it can be even better than before." Gabriel looked at all those people gathered. "Each one of you helped me in some way. with words of support, with courageous testimonies, with volunteer work, with donations. You showed me that kindness exists, that community exists, that when people come together for a greater cause, they can change the world. So thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I promise to keep doing everything in my power to honor the trust you've placed in me. This clinic isn't mine, it's ours, it's the community's, and we will keep growing and helping more and more people together. More applause, more tears, more hugs. The celebration continued late into the night, full of joy and hope. When it finally ended and everyone had left, Gabriel, Sarah, and Lily walked back home together. The town was quiet, lit by streetlights. "It was a good day," said Sarah. "It was a good year," corrected Gabriel. "It was a good life." Lily held both their hands, skipping between them. "And it's going to get even better," she said, with the absolute confidence of childhood. "Because now we have everything we need. We have each other, we have the clinic, we have purpose. What more could we want?" Gabriel smiled. She was right. What more could he want? He had lost 3 years of his life to a cruel crime. He had lost his memories, his career, he had almost lost himself. But in the process of rebuilding, he had found something far more valuable. He had found family, he had found purpose, he had found a way to transform his pain into something good, something that helped others, and perhaps in the end, that was the true victory. Not recovering what was lost, but creating something new and better than what existed before. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Gabriel stayed awake a while longer. He looked out the apartment window, seeing the town outside. Somewhere Harrison was in a prison cell paying for his crimes. Somewhere other people he had helped were living their lives, perhaps thinking of him with gratitude. And here, in this small, cozy apartment, Gabriel was home. Finally, truly home. He was no longer the lost man from the streets. He was no longer the brilliant surgeon who was betrayed. He was something new, a synthesis of all his experiences, the good and the bad. He was Gabriel Sterling, doctor, friend, family, and it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. End of story. And you, what did you think of this journey? Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and if you believe in the power of faith like Lily believed. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories we'll share.